República H, de lunes a viernes a las 8 de la noche por Heraldo Televisión.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives. If you're struggling with your own tax nightmare, we've got great news. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now, you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.
Broadcasting live from Houston, from the space city to the world, you are watching NowMedia Television.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Legal Talk with Natalia on behalf of NowMedia Television and myself, Natalia Łoskaczajka, this time from Houston, Texas, from the studio, with my friend and wonderful guest, Dr. Barbara Sunderland-Manuso, with whom we will be spending this entire episode talking about very different and interesting topics this time. We will be covering what is arbitration, as well as we will be talking about the situations that we encounter in life when we meet high conflict people. That is something I find absolutely interesting. And we will be talking about the difficulties that men go through when they are facing difficult life situations like a breakup of a marriage or other relationship. And to the end, we will be talking about the current trends and challenges in mediation. Throughout all of that, we will be led and guided by Dr. Barbara Sunderland-Manuso from Houston and Rhode Island, currently in Rhode Island. Dr. Barbara Sunderland-Manuso, can I please have you and welcome you? And thank you so much for wanting to be with me and being my guest for the entire episode.
Well, thank you for the invitation. There's a lot of information that you are bringing to the community. So thank you for making it available.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manuso. And you are my number one always when I think about arbitration. And why is that? Because you not only just do arbitration, you are training arbitrators for years. And therefore you can see what it does in people's lives. Dr. Manuso, where do we find arbitration these days? And why is it important for ordinary people?
Well, arbitration is all around us. If you get a credit card, and if you read that small print that is hard to read, you will note that if you have a complaint or a disturbance from the credit card company or the bank, your only legal remedy is that you will go to arbitration. You do not have the option of taking it to a court. And a lot of people don't see that until it's too late. If they really felt that they had been injured and they think, well, I'm just going to go and take this and have a judge make a decision, it's too late. So it's all around us on everything we do, and the choice is you don't take the credit card. If you can't agree that should a dispute arise, you're going to use arbitration.
And when we hear arbitration, we've already gotten accustomed with the mediation concept. But arbitration seems like something hostile, something far more distant from us. Please tell us, should we worry that someone wishes to do arbitration with us? What does this process bring? What does it consist of?
Well, arbitration is when a third-party neutral is the arbiter. The person does not have to be an attorney. And I'm not an attorney, and I've been doing this for 30 years. I've done literally I've written thousands of opinions, and in many different genres, lemon law, employment cases, surprise billing, medical cases. So it's a very broad-based the contracts, transportation. It's very, very broad what arbitration does, but the arbitrator is the one who will hear the evidence from the parties, not a judge, but an arbitrator, and then will make a decision based on whatever the evidence is. Now, the downside, which answers your question, if you are with an insurance company, you've been in a car accident, somebody's whacked you in the back, you don't know the other party anyway, you just want your car fixed and you want to be made whole and you want your medical bills paid, or your credit card, they've taken monies erroneously on your cards. Something has gone wrong that's brought you to arbitration, mandatory arbitration. The company is the one that is paying the arbitrator. So sometimes, as the consumer, you have a disadvantage that the arbitrator, who is supposed to be neutral, might not be as neutral as they should be because they are being paid for their services by the company that has included arbitration clause in your use of whatever service it is that you have taken. So that's the downside. But not everybody's dishonest, and some people will still do the right thing, but you are vulnerable to the salary and monies paid to the arbitrator through the service that you're being arbitrated with.
And when you think about arbitration, is it something that's expensive? Should consumers, should business people choose arbitration? How does it compare in costs in terms of litigation or mediation? And what sort of cases would you indicate that are more suitable for arbitration than others?
Wow, you have 8 questions there. Let me try one of them. The cost of an arbitrator, as an arbitrator, when I'm on a panel, if I'm doing something for Medicare or an insurance company or my surprise billing, usually the arbitrator has a set rate, and it's an established rate, and you either accept the rate to do that, to write that opinion, or not, as from my professional perspective. So if you are doing something that has been court appointed for arbitration, then the door is a little bit more open. And especially arbitration is used a lot in labor, sports. It's also used in international business, because international business arbitration isn't held to just the rules or the laws of one particular area. There's a more general ruling, and your rules that guide the arbitration are going to be specific to the panel that has hired you to do it. As an example, Medicare has their own rules and guidelines for arbitration. So it doesn't matter what state you're in or what laws that even the arbitrator's under, you're going to be under the guidelines and the laws of that panel. And the same if I were doing a lemon law. It's not just the lemon law could be just Texas lemon law. I could be in Virginia lemon law, but whatever the case is brought to me, I'm going to follow the arbitration laws of that panel from that area. But I'm going to have a set rate probably, whatever my rate is for writing that opinion. And it's one item that's being discussed, just one. In mediation, you might start at 1 o'clock on one topic, and it could change by 3 o'clock. More information maybe has come out, and it's different. In arbitration, you arbitrate just what is set forth on the agreement to arbitrate, and it's going to be for the arbitrators paid a set amount that they've agreed to with the panel that has asked the arbitrator to arbitrate, and then as the guidelines for how it's being done, how the arbitration will be held, will be under that state's or that panel's guidelines. So very often in consumer cases, the arbitrator is only paid by the company. They're not paid by the injured consumer. Now in court cases, that could be different, and that's a different ball game, and it's something that might be over 5 or 6 different arbitrations and processes, witnesses, and it has more of a feeling of a court of law, but it's arbitration. So that's different. But most of the time it's used for consumer ideas.
Dr. Manuso, if someone wishes to have you as an arbitrator on their business case, or if someone wishes to take a class on arbitration, how to understand it better and how to become an arbitrator, what is the best way to reach you and to enroll?
Well, it's mediation at Menuso.us. Menuso.us is the website, and you can also just call 713-557-1010, and that would be at mediation@menuso.us is an email, or you can use our fax line, our text line, which is 713-557-1010. And often arbitration is going to come from a panel. Both parties have to agree to arbitration, and if one side it doesn't have a structure where they have to do it, it's going to be hard to bring them to the table unless it's court appointed or by a panel.
Thank you so much.
That's arbitration.
Yes, thank you. And with that, I would want to welcome everybody to a break. And after that, we will still see Dr. Manuso for the next segments. And the next segment will be about high conflict people. See you after the break.
What if you could feel in control of your retirement in just a few clicks? At aceyourretirement.org, you can. Start with a free 3-minute chat with Avo, your friendly digital retirement coach. Just answer some simple questions like, how do you feel about your ability to save for retirement? Or in how many years do you want to retire? To get free action items customized just for you. Get your retirement back on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
You are loved. You are valued. You are resilient. You got this.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides at aarp.org/caregiving.
There's so many rewards in life. You coming into our home was one of the greatest rewards we could have ever had.
You know, it took 20 years, and I got my third child, who was 17 at the time.
It's so cool to watch the adult that you've become, and you really have done as much for us as you think we've done for you.
Oye, Lily dice que AT&T le da a todos las mejores ofertas.
Minus the air quotes.
Las mejores ofertas.
No need to wink. Others say they give everyone a deal, but not everyone gets the best deal.
Te lo dije, aquí las mejores ofertas son para todos con una variedad de planes.
You were right.
Is she always right?
Always.
En AT&T les damos a todos nuestras mejores ofertas en cada smartphone.
República H, con Sofía García.
Una república que necesita saber cuál es el camino correcto.
En República H te diremos qué pasa en cada rincón del país. ¿Qué pasa en tu estado? ¿Qué hace tu gobernador, presidente municipal o alcalde en materia de seguridad, salud, desarrollo, economía o servicios básicos para atender a su población? Tenemos desplegados más de 70 corresponsales en todo el país y más allá de las fronteras.
República H, de lunes a viernes a las 8 de la noche por Heraldo Televisión.
Welcome after the break to Legal Talk with Natalia. Apart from our guests of today in the entire episode, Dr. Barbara Sunderland-Manuso, today with us also a licensed therapist and coach, Jaina Haney. Jaina, can we say hello to our audience from you as well? And the topic we're going to be discussing is high conflict people. This is the area of expertise of Jaina, and Dr. Barbara Manuso, being the conflict resolution specialist, is our expert today to also answer the questions I will be having about high conflict people in the legal profession and how it works. Welcome, Jaina, and welcome again, Dr. Manuso.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
So, Jaina, high conflict people, how can we define what it is, and why does it bother us to even distinguish this category of people, especially in the legal profession?
Well, I want to thank you so much for having me on today. I'd like to say that I first learned about high conflict people when I worked with Bill Eddy at the High Conflict Institute. I'm a licensed provider for his program called New Ways for Families. And Bill Eddy beautifully defines high conflict people as having about 6 traits. The first 4 are they have all or nothing thinking, so black and white thinking. People are either all good or all bad. Situations are either all good or all bad. And one of the problems with this all or nothing thinking is that if you look in the DSM-5 under mental health in America, under mental health situations or symptoms of many of the different mental health problems, all or nothing thinking is at the top of many of them. And so all or nothing thinking becomes really problematic for folks. The second one would be unmanaged emotions. So the inability to regulate, to take a step back, to count to 10, to whatever it is that you need to do so that you are not always just completely acting on impulse, but have an ability to manage emotions. A third one is extreme behaviors. So high conflict people are at this end or this end, but they are the same people that text you 35 times or send you 25 emails or will not leave it alone. And the normal boundaries that you might use with somebody, as in, please stop emailing me, I'm busy, or I will call you back, they oversee, they override. And none of the normal things that we ask people to do, they don't do. And the last trait, the fourth trait that's so important, is that high conflict people never, ever, 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 ever take responsibility for anything. High conflict people blame others for everything. And that is usually the difficulty that we find when we are working with high conflict people. And whenever I talk about this topic to audiences of all different shapes and sizes, everybody in the audience is always shaking their head when I talk about that blaming others for everything, because we all know somebody that seems to routinely do that. Now, I want to say here that high conflict people are not, everybody can be high conflict sometimes. So, when I'm in an airport and my flight is 3 hours late, I can be high conflict. So this is not about, we all have bad moments. We all have difficult times. We all react in ways we don't like. But for high conflict people, this is routinely the way they operate and think. The last two traits of high conflict people that Bill Eddy talks about are, one, high conflict people triangulate others. So it's not enough that they don't like you. They want to bring everybody else in to not like you either. And they will utilize therapists, attorneys, amicus or ad litems, people in the court, pediatricians, anybody that works with the family. They will bring those folks in, or if it's in a workplace, they will go to HR and complain. So they will always be bringing in other people, and those folks are called negative advocates. And the last trait is the one I should have mentioned before, which is it's not that they just blame others for everything. They always have specific targets of blame. And so in my work with single parents and step families, what I find is that it's often the ex. The ex is the person who is responsible for every problem, every issue, and the ex is who they blame the most. So those are the traits of high conflict people.
Thank you so much, because that explains so much, and I think that already set everybody's brains on fire to think, wow. And the thing is that we are always able to diagnose others. We are not saying that ourselves, and this is very true. But Dr. Manuso, since we are in a legal show, I wanted to ask you whether you see high conflict people in the legal profession, and if yes, how does it manifest in itself?
Well, yes, the practitioners themselves, the lawyers, the mediators that are involved in families, also exhibit these qualities that you just discovered or described to us, Jana. And it's so important that the lawyers and the mediators are the ones who can identify their triggers that might create them to be in these positions, because they need to help their clients. And I see so many families destroyed, absolutely destroyed, or people destroyed because they can't help manage especially attorneys. And I'm going to say the mediator is neutral, so they're working with both sides. An attorney is the sword or the legal representative for one side. And if they have high conflict tendencies themselves, they're going to convey this to their client, and that just takes their client right out of the water. And it can go on for years. People have no idea that the perpetuation of the high conflict situation is a domino effect. And when I hear people that have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on their legal representation because their lawyer just kept it going, and the parties, they could have spent the money on a nice trip or something to resolve themselves or to give themselves a little affirmation. So it's very detrimental. So what I've heard you say, Jana, is so important for the clients, but even more so, I would say, that should be checked and considered by the attorneys that are representing people that are going through these emotional high conflict moments that might be once in their life that they're going through a divorce.
And yes, this is so important, Dr. Manuso, that a bad counsel does not spoil the entire case and actually does not try to detriment the clients by prolonging the process. Am I right, Jana, that high conflict people are those that feed themselves with the conflict and the emotions it brings? Are these the same people that you would say normally cause drama? So is drama connected with high conflict people, Jana? What do you think?
Well, I think there's a couple of things to consider. The first one is that there's something called the fundamental attribution error. And fundamental attribution error is a cognitive bias or an error that we all will often fall into if we're not aware of it. And it is believing that because someone is angry at you, that they are then an angry person, we take one small part or see them in one situation and we make an assumption about them as a whole. What Barbara was talking about is whenever we have protracted legal battles, where that's a personal injury case or a child custody case, which is the area where I primarily work now, what we will see is we will see people that normally would be very calm, people that would normally be able to process, would normally be able to manage their emotions, would normally be able to be very flexible, and they are not able to do any of those things. And not because they are difficult or because they are mean people or because they are intentionally trying to create trauma, but in many cases it's because they have been traumatized by this process of being attacked and having to constantly defend themselves in family court or in a civil battle. Also because high conflict, because people have past trauma, and the process of being in a legal issue creates and brings up that trauma. And I think that what I try to talk about, and what Bill Eddy also mentions in his great work, is that people who respond in a high conflict manner actually have something that we call a mistaken assessment of danger. And Bill Eddy uses MAD as the acronym for this, which is very appropriate. But if you think about mistaken assessment of danger, the reality is they feel unsafe. So what I would say to you is the first thing we can do to avoid creating problems for ourselves and our clients is to not decide that they are high conflict or not, but to understand that when we have a large reaction or a lot of drama or a lot of problems with clients that we see as a mediator or an attorney, we want to remember this may not be how this person is all the time, that there are other things going on, and at the heart of it, they feel unsafe and endangered.
And it is our role, for example, in mediation, Dr. Manusov, to make these high conflict people some way safe, so that to calm down these emotions. Is it how you work with people in mediation when you are running it? And I understand you are more into business mediation, Dr. Manusov, rather than family mediation, but business mediation brings emotions too.
Well, business mediation, it's the family you're with all day. You probably have more interaction, more conversation, and more time with people during the day than even a regular family or a husband and wife at home. But even relating it back to any type of scenario, I'm glad you mentioned about the mediators, because a mediator's role is to be neutral and to help the parties have a conversation they probably haven't had before, and to help them be in the same reality. Because a lot of the time, the conflict goes way out of control because of misperceptions, missed ideas. And often when I hear a conflict, because we always have the parties tell us what brought you here today and what you're hoping to get out of the conversation in front of each other. Because I want the parties to hear what the other side is saying. I'm not going to be the translator. They need to talk to each other, but in a safe space and without interruption. So the parties have an opportunity to talk and say what they need to say to the mediator, not to the other party. That will engage a fight, but to the mediator without interruption. And each side gets to hear what was said. Then the parties have an opportunity to engage. And that is one of the most powerful parts of what the intent of mediation is.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manusov. Thank you so much, Jaina. We're having Dr. Manusov with us to stay for the entire episode. But Jaina, I want to thank you so much for your words of wisdom. Could you please tell us what's best to reach you in case of wanting to have you in the therapy, to help with therapy or to coach, and if anybody is interested more in your trainings on high conflict people, what's the best way to reach you?
Thank you, Natalia. I'm so happy to have been here today. Anyone can reach me at thebridgeacross.com. And I am a licensed therapist in Texas, and then I do coaching online and throughout the United States and abroad. So delighted to work with anyone. They just contact my office. They go to the contact page and they can sign up for an intake with our intake coordinator. So very happy to be here today and appreciate you inviting me.
Thank you so much for your fantastic work. And with that, I thank you once again. I'm sure I will have you again, Jaina, and of course, Dr. Manuso as well. And let me welcome everybody to a short break.
What if you could feel in control of your retirement in just a few clicks? At aceyourretirement.org, you can. Start with a free 3-minute chat with Avo, your friendly digital retirement coach. Just answer some simple questions like, how do you feel about your ability to save for retirement? Or in how many years do you want to retire? To get free action items customized just for you. Get your retirement back on track at aceyourretirement.org.
Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
You are loved. You are valued. You are resilient. You got this.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides at aarp.org/caregiving.
There's so many rewards in life. You coming into our home was one of the greatest rewards we could have ever had.
You know, it took 20 years, and I got my third child, who was 17 at the time.
It's so cool to watch the adult that you've become, and you really have done as much for us as you think we've done for you.
Oye, Lily dice que AT&T le da a todos las mejores ofertas.
Minus the air quotes.
Las mejores ofertas.
No need to wink. Others say they give everyone a deal, but not everyone gets the best deal.
Te lo dije, aquí las mejores ofertas son para todos con una variedad de planes.
You were right.
Is she always right?
Always.
En AT&T les damos a todos nuestras mejores ofertas en cada smartphone.
República H, con Sofía García.
Una república que necesita saber cuál es el camino correcto.
En República H te diremos qué pasa en cada rincón del país. ¿Qué pasa en tu estado? ¿Qué hace tu gobernador, presidente municipal o alcalde en materia de seguridad, salud, desarrollo, economía o servicios básicos para atender a su población? Tenemos desplegados más de 70 corresponsales en todo el país y más allá de las fronteras.
República H, de lunes a viernes a las 8 de la noche por Heraldo Televisión.
Welcome after the break, and it is my pleasure to have constantly with me Dr. Barbara Sunderland-Manuso, but also her guest, who is becoming my guest too, Mike Haney, who is a coach for men. And yes, this is it, coach for men. And we're going to be talking about the importance of managing family situations from the perspective, for example, of being a stepdad and whether you can learn it. Welcome, Mike. It's great to be able to see you. Thank you for accepting the invitation to be with us today.
I really appreciate it, Natalia. Congratulations on the show. I'm really proud of what you're doing here.
Thank you so much. So starting with that, Mike, why do people need coaching for their family lives, and how does it work with you, what you see in your practice? Who comes to you?
That's a great question, Natalia. One of the things that I see is a lot of things are going on with families and specifically with men going through divorce. It's a big change for men. Oftentimes their lives are going through such changes as they went through divorce. Oftentimes a lot of their social networks came through their wives. So once those are broken, That can be a real challenge for men and how they sort of move into the next phase of their lives. Also, if they find themselves remarried in a step family, that's a whole other set of challenges. One, of course, forming a relationship with your new wife, but also potentially having to form relationships with your wife's biological children or being a stepfather. So lots of things to think about and address there for for men in that situation.
Thank you for that. And Dr. Manusau, is it also your observation in your practice that those situations of the breakup are particularly stressful for men, maybe more than for women?
Yes. And again, thank you for keeping me part of this conversation, because we worry so much. I'm a mediator, and when couples come in for mediation, it is sometimes surprising, even for the woman, to see the man cry so much. Even if the man wants the divorce, or that they both have had blows for so long with each other that it was inevitable that they're going to have a divorce, and there's a sense of relief, but it's not uncommon for a man to be totally befuddled. They might not even be as prepared as the wife when they come in with materials, financial, personal, other things that might be required for them to have a conversation about in the mediation, because the man is just so befuddled, he can't even think straight. This is a fish out of water, so to speak. And I just admire so much what Mike is doing and how he's bringing the conversation to public awareness and having resources for men, by a man, for a man, to help them through these really odd times that are very, very stressful. Women go through stress too, and but I think a woman has a different mentality, and I don't like to be gender specific about it, but men are often just at a total loss. So Mike, what you're doing is just incredibly fine, and I welcome it at our mediation table.
And this is actually a great introduction again to what I wanted to ask Mike myself. Mike, my experience with doing divorces and mediations in family breakups is that men have absolutely less support from their friends and family when they are going through something like that. Is my observation correct?
I think you're spot on with that, Natalia. It's a real issue for men. For whatever reason, men have perhaps more trouble making friends after the age of about 22 or so. Women have a much better ability to do this than men do, and especially as men go into their work lives and other parts of their lives. Perhaps get married, have a family. They tend to spend most of their relationship time in the family and not so much in finding new friends. And that's oftentimes the most appropriate thing to do. As they go through, say, their work lives, they find that they will have good friends with work colleagues, but of course those change too, right? Men will leave positions. A peer gets promoted above you, and perhaps the friendship is a little awkward. And so what happens in a divorce for a man, it can be really challenging. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the couple friendships that couples have are generated and led by the women. For whatever reason, women have a lot more neurons and are much more conversational than men, a lot more abilities in those areas. So oftentimes the men will sort of go along with that. But unfortunately, when a divorce happens, a lot of those relationships come to an end. So a man can find himself with a lot fewer friends than he had before. Even things like perhaps you were friends with your brother-in-law, right? Well, now that relationship is probably not as tight as it should be. So, and then a lot of other folks really just don't know what to do with or for a man who's going through a divorce. They feel like it's just such a challenging situation that they really don't want to get involved. So really, it's very rare for a man to come through a divorce with more friends at the end than he had at the beginning. That's for sure.
And I want to follow with the question that goes on. And whenever there is a breakup in a relationship and there were children, and these men were already fathers to those children, just like it happens because they married someone who already had children, this sort of a breakup also causes men to lose someone they loved. And do you see that it's been hard for men to go through that? And that brings me another question. How do you help people, men, cope with that? And what do you teach in terms of being a stepdad?
Right. No, these are great questions and challenging ones all. I think these men can't get enough support. As you mentioned earlier, the support network for some of these men is very, very limited to begin with. And once you go through a divorce in these challenging times, you really have very few people to talk to about it. So the challenge of going through a divorce itself is very painful and can lead to a lot of things, that angry words that were said during the mediation or during the court case that could then redound negatively to your ability to co-parent with your ex-spouse, right? And then, as you suggested earlier, if a man remarries and marries a woman who has biological kids of her own, that opens up a whole nother set of challenges, how to be a good stepdad. It's a very strange relationship to be a step-parent in general, and a stepdad in particular, because these aren't your biological kids. You don't have the long relationship that you have with, say, your own bio kids. And it's hard for a man to switch and understand that this is a very different relationship he has to form with his new wife's biological children. And it has a lot of potential potholes and roadblocks ahead.
And thank you for that. Dr. Manusso, are we then therefore addressing those men issues in mediation and in the mediation agreements? Do we particularly treat someone with a special care if he's a stepdad, and how to preserve a relationship with the children that are not actually this man's children or this woman's children?
Well, thank you for the question, because it transcends what actually is considered to be part of a mediation process. The mediation process is basically a business deal. You roll up your sleeves, you're helping people through the financial part of it, the time schedule with their children, etc. But we as mediators, our role is not to be therapeutic in any shape or form, even if we are trained in that area, which a lot are not. We've met Jana, who is, and Mike, who is, but they can't do dual practice. So in mediation itself, that's strictly a business deal. And the parties are kept together so they can communicate and they can have this business conversation that they haven't had with each other before, in a safe space with the guidance of a skilled mediator. But one of the things that might be recommended in the mediation or offered as a resource is somebody like Mike Haney, which is a very unique service that he's offering, where he can be a man coach and help the man in the mediation alleviate some of the issues that he just talked about, and help give them that new friend support that maybe the woman in the divorce is already getting through her friends or their network, since women will reveal themselves more than most men don't reveal themselves. They don't want to show weakness. They want to be the strong one. And I think Mike is an ideal person to help coach a man through a divorce, and not just the divorce, maybe even help them set up as they go through new relationships with the stepchildren of somebody they might become attracted to or marry. And so it's a bigger picture what Mike has to offer. And it is really outside of the scope of the mediation process, except the mediator should be aware of the service and offer it only as a resource. And it can be put into a mediated settlement agreement so somebody says, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want, well, maybe the wife is, you might not want to be married to somebody, but you still might like them. You might not love them anymore. So the wife can say, no, if you're going to be divorced and as you're going forward, I want to make sure you have support. So they could put that in a mediated settlement agreement, but I'm not going to be the therapist. And Mike, if he were the mediator, he's not going to be the therapist, but he's the outside resource when he is not the mediator.
So Dr. Manuso, you brought me to the point where I would want Mike to present what sort of services he offers so that he can be a resource to men, but also to mediators who want to point out to some men going through difficult situations what sort of help they can get. What do you do with men, Mike?
I appreciate that, Natalia. It's a wide range of services, as you might imagine. The men are going through these challenging times, going through divorce, going through remarriage, and all the other things that are challenging for men. In particular, I think that some of the things we've already talked about, that sense of loneliness that men feel, and also something else that men can often do, unfortunately, is when they're in a situation where they don't know what to do, they can just ball up and not do anything. Sometimes that may be the right thing to do, but oftentimes it's not. With education, with some insights for folks, and from an experienced man who's been through a lot of this, I believe that I can help men be more accurately guided through these situations and much more intentional about what they do. One thing that men often overlook is something called the grief cycle as they go through this process. It's a classic, going through a divorce, my goodness, first I'm in denial that this happened, right? And then I get angry, and then I make bargain. I'm in perhaps a later acceptance and hope, ideally. And there's a moment of depression there as well. So if a man can understand this and I can help coach him through that, that can be very valuable to a man. And another thing that men, I think, will benefit from is thinking about perhaps the longer term in their divorce. Specifically, there might be a lot of challenges during the legal process, either in family court itself, between the various attorneys, and or in mediation. And those are tough issues to be hashed out: custody, asset division, all the rest. But I've been helping men going through this to think about the bigger picture, not so much try to have such a combative relationship with your soon-to-be ex-wife in the process, but set the stage at least as an opportunity to build a more constructive co-parenting relationship going forward, to give those men that perspective on how this might all play itself out in the medium and long run. So
okay,
those are some of the things that I help men
Mike Haney, mancarriage.com, and thank you, Barbara, and I will welcome everybody now to a break. I'm so sorry.
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that I would never be able to get over it and that my kids wouldn't have a father. I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. For the longest time, fear held me back from ultimately being who I wanted to. I had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
Welcome again after the break for the fourth segment today, the closing one, when we were going to, after hearing all this wisdom about men going through difficult situations, about dealing with high conflict people, and about the details of arbitration, I am now going to ask my friend and expert, Dr. Barbara Sandral-Manuso, what are the trends in mediation nowadays? Dr. Manuso, what do you see in mediation these days?
Well, Natalia, I would like to tell you that I see mediation as growing into something special and very well defined. And what I am seeing in mediation after doing this for 30 years, unfortunately, there are people, often attorneys, who also mediate, who are derailing what the intent of mediation is all about. And that's not a good trend. And it happens in the Texas market a lot more than it does any place else in the world. And I've been fortunate to be a lecturer around the world. Our students come from around the world that we treat at MNUSO Mediation and Arbitration. And what I hear too often is that parties come into a mediation, they're put in separate rooms, and then they have horror stories. They don't hear what the other party has to say. They are brought proposals that they should just accept, that the mediator says, this is a good deal, you'd be foolish not to accept it. Or you'll have somebody that has been put in a room and they're paying for the mediator, and the mediator might be doing 3 cases at once, that it's not part of your case, but they're charging you by the hour or by the time, and they are actually on other cases. So they are abusing the client and the mediation process. So these are negative trends. And I would like to tell you more about what should be a positive trend in mediation.
Thank you for making a suggestion what my next question will be. And of course, I will ask you this question in a moment. I just, listening to all of that, I thought that whenever we diagnose a problem, and you come also from the healthcare background, we should also give a remedy. So I know that after the mediation, it's too late, right? You hear about these horrors once the mediation is done and it is too late. But when someone is experiencing that, like being given an alternative, take it or leave it, or not being attended properly by mediator, what should these people do when this actual situation happens?
Well, I think a prophylactic measure, and a lot of people only go to mediation maybe once in their life. Sometimes they're represented by attorneys, so the attorney should be able to make sure that their clients are given a proper mediation, because the attorneys accompany their client to mediation. And if clients come as pro se, which means they come without attorneys, which is not uncommon for divorce cases, people save money by just going to mediation if they don't have a lot of legal points that need to be unraveled. So these are opportunities to inform people so they know what the process is before they have a problem. And I'm always happy to talk to people on the phone. Even if they don't hire me, I will tell them what they should expect in mediation. And so sometimes people are in it before they realize that that didn't feel right. And it's too late. They've spent the time, they spent the money, and maybe they've even signed the mediated settlement agreement, which is now a legally binding document, and that's it. They've signed away something not comfortable for themselves, perhaps.
Dr. MNUSO, back to your question. So what then should be the positive trends in mediation? What should we be seeing more? How the mediation should develop these days?
Well, mediation, it has guidelines. There are ethical standards by each state, and we have the state of Texas, ethical guidelines for civil cases and family cases, and the American Bar Association also has model standards for mediation of family cases and civil cases, and the Association for Conflict Resolution, which is the international organization that embraces the training and the ongoing training, actually, of mediators worldwide. They have model standards. And it's very clearly laid out that the concept of mediation and the business of mediation is that the parties are active participants. It's about them. It's not negotiated settlement where their attorneys just talk and the mediator, the party just sits there and says, oh, is that what I want to do? Well, it's their life, it's their money, and it's their time. The whole concept of mediation is that the parties, not their attorneys, the parties are the architects of their solution. The attorneys are there to provide legal advice and legal support. And this is a separate process. Mediation is a process unto itself. And that's where this needs to be reinforced. And when we train people, I tell them, if I ever hear that you're doing bad mediation, where you've thrown people in a separate room and the mediator runs between the rooms carrying messages, that's negotiated settlement. I'm not going to be happy with you, and I won't recommend you. And mediation is when the parties are together, they hear and are heard. They might have an opportunity to caucus. Sometimes the parties need clarity, and the mediator helps them find clarity by having a private meeting with each party. And if you meet with one side, you meet with the other. But then you come back together, and the conversation, the dialogue that the parties have it together as they move forward to design their solutions.
The pandemic brought us into this new reality when we treat equally in-person mediations and online mediations. How do you see that? Do you see more space for online mediation these days, or do you think it's good that people start returning to in-person mediation? What's your observation on that, and what do you think the trend will be?
Well, I think now that we've done it on Zoom, I don't think we can look back. I do think online mediation is so much more available. It's easy. A lot of my clients are not in state. I do a lot of federal cases that people are all over the country. And so it's very easy to bring everybody in. It's less expensive for the companies. I think Zoom is here to stay. And I would project that 70 to 80% of cases are done on Zoom. And people still want that human contact, and there's still cases where it's relevant, and I think it would be more beneficial to do it in person. And if I'm doing elder and adult care mediation, bringing the family together, even at their home around their table where they're used to gathering, but maybe now have hit a snag where they need a conversation that they're just not finding any satisfaction from, then they can mediate. So mediation has flexibility, but it still holds that the parties are the lead. The mediation is about the parties, and the parties need to be the architects of their solution no matter what, and they need to hear each other, and they need to be heard by each other. And that is pretty worldwide. And only around Texas, we seem to have lost sight of that concept. But the ethics and the model standards for mediation, that's how they embrace and frame the process. And I think people need to hold the process, not think they're being creative when they're just spinning the parties' wheels or not providing them with a quality mediation. So,
Dr. Manuso, Barbara, you not only are the expert in mediation and you mediate, but you also teach mediation. I know you have ongoing courses, I've taken your courses, and I know what I love about this course was that you can jump on the course in the future once you've taken it. So if you want to deepen parts of your knowledge, you can still return and be a part of your training. If you still have some inquiries, you can join the group. As long as you are on Dr. Manuso's website, you'll find the trainings if you've taken one. you can participate in another one. So actually you can master that.
For no charge.
Yeah, with no charge. And this is a wonderful thing again. So Dr. Manuso, tell us how you do it and what's the best way if anybody would want to have you as a mediator or arbitration tutor or take your course. What's the best way to reach you?
Well, you're showing the website, and I appreciate that. And we do have a little clip of the remnants of an opening for a mediation, and it gives a little bit of the framework. But they should call 713-557-1010, 713-557-1010, and you can text, call, and or go to the website and see it, look it over, and see what anybody can be a mediator. You don't have to be an attorney, and I think that's important for people to know. So 713-557-1010. Look forward to talking to you, and don't be surprised, I answer my own phone.
This is an amazing thing about you again. Dr. Manuso, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have you. I know how, with your wisdom, you reach out to so many people. I know how you teach both the basic stuff, the ethics, and the depths of mediation. Thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us. And with that, I would really want to thank you for this entire episode here with me, for the talk, and for your kindness, for your time. And I would want to say goodbye to our viewers and